Hello everyone, I wanted to take this chance to talk about your third and final project for Modern American History. So this is the Unit 3 project. It covers the last chapters we're going to talk about, so chapters 28 through 32. And your job or your task with this is to write an essay where you pitch, do a sales pitch of a new exhibit within a museum. So part of your essay will be outlining your museum. One of the first things you're going to want to do is outline what your museum is, where it is, who it caters to, so its audience, its mission. You're going to want to talk a little bit about its layout and its location. And then you're going to want to start talking about the new exhibit you have planned for this museum. You want to make sure that it's very clear the theme of this exhibit. It has to have a theme. And you want to make sure that the 5 objects that you have to find to put in this exhibit are going to follow with that theme, and it's a very clear connection for whoever would visit this exhibit between the exhibit space and the objects within it. Your job is to write a 2-page description of each one of these exhibit display items. So the most important thing you're going to talk about with this 2-page description for this class is actually going to be its historic significance. Obviously, you want to describe the object, you want to talk about how it relates to the exhibit theme, but you really want to say why you chose it to be in your exhibit space. Out of all of the things you could have chosen to put in this exhibit, why did you choose these 5 items? This is going to require you to do a little bit of research. You're going to need to be able to tell me where this object is currently. You're going to need to be able to tell me why it's important to your exhibit space, how it relates to the class, and how it relates to those chapters, that chapter content. Overall, this paper is going to be about 9 to 12 pages, which sounds long, but if you start breaking out, 2 pages per each exhibit item, that's 10 pages right there. Students usually have, at least 2 pages in their description of the museum itself. So you start out with the museum description and then you come into explaining your exhibit items. You're at 12 pages. Usually students turn in actually 12 to 14 pages for this assignment. 9 pages is probably going to be a little short. Your job in this is to kind of sell the exhibit to your reader. So again, think of it as a sales pitch. You want to make sure that you're justifying the objects you're picking with their historic significance. You're justifying how they fit into the exhibit theme and the museum as a whole. And you want to make sure that they are well documented. So if you can, I usually tell students to include an appendix where you have pictures or photos of what you want to include in the museum. Keep in mind that these documents, these photos of what you're trying to include, do not count towards the page count. So I try to tell students, make this an appendix so that you don't confuse the page count. If you include it in the document itself, then you need to take that into account when you're making sure you meet these page requirements. So I did include an example here of if you chose the Mona Lisa, kind of the type of background information I'm looking for. Notice that it's succinct, it's not very lengthy. And then once you get through this, the most important part would then be describing its historic significance. The description of the item is short and concise so that you have enough space to talk about its historic significance and its relationship to the course in the museum. As with the previous unit project, this is going to be an APA format. It should be in 12-point font, Times New Roman, double-spaced, and it should include consistent and accurate citations. You have to have a works cited included in this assignment. If you do not include a works cited page, you are basically plagiarizing information and it will result in a 0. So you must include a works cited. This project and your essay will be graded on its consistency and creativity, your ability to link the materials to the course, and link the overall historic narrative to your museum. But I've also included, because this assignment is a little different from what most students are used to, a very basic kind of grading rubric that I go by. You want to be in that masterful and skilled box each time. So your goal is to cover each one of these criteria and to cover them as they're described in this first box. So make sure your exhibit has 5 objects on display, 5 objects that you're talking about and describing. This is probably one of the more important components. Make sure you have a museum description. You've given your museum a title. You've given your exhibit a theme, that you've talked about the layout and the mission, where it's at. Make sure your citations are clear, they're correct, they have the consistent formatting, and they are clearly present. You have a work cited. Make sure your spelling and grammar and mechanics are correct. Grammatical errors, I understand if you have 1 or 2, but make sure that you are as minimal with the grammatical errors as you can be. Try to avoid informal language, contractions, things like that. And remember that the photos or the addendums, the attachments that you have, pictures of the exhibit items, do not count in the required essay length. And then lastly, the relationship of the museum and the exhibit to the course. Make sure that the museum, the exhibit, and all of the display items clearly relate to the course content from those chapters. Make sure that you're not discussing materials that you've already discussed on other assignments, because this is the last one. And make sure that everything is clearly explained, documented, and researched. So you can peruse some of the do's and don'ts. These are more of the don't columns. The do column is definitely masterful and skilled. And again, if you have questions on how to write an essay, you can always go into Canvas. You can go into the Help button, and you can go into the Cite It Right page. And this will give you, again, tips on how to do APA style formatting, how to do bibliographies, and other useful links. So yeah, I hope you guys have fun with this project. Pick something that interests you, make sure it falls within those chapter guidelines, and show me an awesome museum.